I saw from afar more, descriptively, it was just how well the offensive line played together. You could tell that that team really relies on the offensive line, and they're a true, band of brothers mentality, and that's what I was looking for.
Offensive linemen always have big necks, don't they?
Well, you have to.
It's unmistakable.
You have to.
Welcome back to another very special edition of the Enough Said program. My name's Dan Barreiro. Justin Gaard is co-hosting with me, and to officiate this event, as always, the person responsible for that opening soundbite, Lori Fisher. Hi, Lori.
Hi, and I'd like to help Brian Kelly with his zoom angle. So his neck might look bigger than it really is because you have to go straight on with that zoom. A lot of times people just have that angle too low.
Lori, offensive linemen don't think about aesthetics.
The angles aren't going to matter.
They are grunts, man. They just want to beat people up. That's all they want. That's
As
all
always,
they care
though,
about.
we appreciate your feedback on how other people do things. We always appreciate your feedback.
Maybe I'll get a hold of the Vikings PR and let them know. Maybe
I'm sure
do a
they'll
little
listen.
lesson with them.
Yep.
Well,
What line was he watching, by the way, that he got that impression with that soundbite? That's just me.
Okay, more Vikings developments this week. We just heard from the new center, Ryan Kelly, formerly of the Colts. The Vikes added running back Jordan Maxson from the 49ers and wide receiver Rondale Moore, who was with the Falcons but sidelined last season due to a knee injury. He'd be backup for Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. And despite a lot of national attention, the team isn't interested in adding quarterback Aaron Rodgers. They do still need a veteran to join rookie J.J. McCarthy. Dan?
For now.
For now.
For now.
Not interested for now?
You buried the lead. I was afraid you were going to ignore it completely.
No.
But you finally, we got to start there, even though it drives a lot of Vikings fans crazy because they think it was an invented media story from the beginning. You guys are younger than I am. Of course, that's not saying much. Are you either one of you familiar with an old tune? It was I think it was a top, 10 hit, maybe even top of the charts.
Okay.
Called, it was Seals and Crofts was the duo that did it, and it's called "We May Never Pass This Way."
Oh
Again.
yeah.
Terrific song.
Yeah.
No, sorry.
From back in the day.
In fairness,
Lori,
I'm only familiar with it because I work with you on the radio.
I bring it
I'm
up.
going to pass on that
that's
one.
the
Lori,
only
you need
reason.
to listen to it. You actually, I think, would enjoy it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's the
I'll
only
put it
thing
on.
I'm going to say to Vikings fans who are allegedly relieved that this dream has died. We may never have another chance to embark upon what would have been an unprecedented story. It may have been a story of disaster, but it also could have been a story of astonishing redemption and getting to the bowl. And I still believe that the Vikings seriously considered it. I really do. I don't think it was made up. I don't think it was invented. And I'm maybe holding on to the story too long because until we get that backup quarterback you're talking about, and even then, until we see J.J. McCarthy is progressing the way the Vikings think he needs to be the starter from day one, I rule nothing out as long as Aaron Rodgers does not sign with another team. And I'm just saying.
It doesn't sound like he's going to for a while.
Right.
He's playing it out. It was quite a song and dance. I am fascinated, though, that people think this was all just made up and that veteran reporters that if you're a Vikings reporter.
These are not shock jock reporters.
No, and you don't need any clicks. I don't know how to break it to people. If you're a Vikings reporter, it's getting clicked no matter what you say. That's how popular the Vikings are. And the Vikings had every opportunity, speaking of reporters, through back channels, to put this thing out day one when we started to get that smoke, right? When the speculation started to begin. Look out for the Vikings. They might be a wild card team. I'm not saying they were going to go all in on Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, they haven't, and they probably won't. But they obviously talked about it. They obviously spent a lot of time discussing it and trying to figure out, is this the direction that we're going to go? So I know we're media people, so we're going to get accused of defending our media brethren here. But the Vikings had every opportunity, Dan, to say, no, this isn't what we're doing. And by the way, put that out through reporters, and they never did. Now, is it the right decision? I tend to think yes. I think they built this whole thing around the idea of J.J. McCarthy and signing all these people. They did save a lot of money, though, and they would have had a bunch to give to Aaron Rodgers if they wanted to. It was a two-pronged attack for me the whole time. The lifelong Vikings fan that didn't want the wild card factor of it, and then the media person who absolutely would have loved it. That would have been good for business. We'll be frontal about that. That would have been good for clicks. Aaron Rodgers would have gotten more clicks, but in the end, I think they're ready to just hand it off to JJ.
Here's what will be good for business that's a little bit more boring but is important. The Vikings have spent an extraordinary amount of money this offseason, and much of it has been to, it appears,
the trenches.
In the trenches to fix, on the offensive side, a putrid running game. And I'm hoping that includes, of course, interior offensive linemen. It includes bringing Jones back, getting another running back, Mason, getting another all-purpose, maybe third wide receiver guy. What's his Rondale
Moore.
Moore, yeah, exactly.
Great college player.
And a great college player who's got to prove he can come back from a significant knee injury. But all of that, if this finally means that the head coach gets, we have to run better no matter how much of a passing team we want to be, this will be a success because that's the number one area this team has to get better offensively.
I read that Rondale Moore started doing backflips when he was 10 years old.
That sounds right.
And my hope is that maybe we'll have some interesting touchdown celebrations since we're
no one's going to be able to
since we
top
lost
Cam
Bynum.
Yeah,
but I'm hoping that he can fill the gap on that.
We lost Cam Bynum on KFAN radio my weekly
Oh, I'm sorry.
Every Monday.
I know, he was a nice guy. Well, after winning 8 straight games, the Timberwolves lost 2 in a row, most recently against the New Orleans Pelicans, one of the worst teams in the league, almost at the bottom. There's a rematch tonight at the Target Center. Hopefully the Wolves can redeem themselves, Justin.
Well, I like the graphic there, What's Going On, another old song that Dan uses on the radio show. We could do that. I would say too much, too little, too late. I would say I feel stupid. I honestly feel stupid because I thought they had fixed this thing. I thought they had finally understood what it was going to take to get themselves into the top 6. This was a disastrous week. You get all that momentum. We talked about them last Friday night, how well they were playing. The ball was moving. They were defending. Guys were sharing it. Guys were on fire. Anthony Edwards was getting to the line. They had a loser-proof game on Monday night against Indiana. They messed around with that for a half and then allowed for Obi Toppin to become Reggie Miller all of a sudden, for people old enough to remember that legendary
pacer. That's a Seals and Crofts reference, too.
It could be, yeah. And so that was how the margin for error was in that game. And then, okay, team got hot. They beat you at home. That's going to happen. How do you follow it up? By getting Zioned on Wednesday night and losing to a team that I think to that point, Dan, had 6 road victories the entire season.
And multiple starters out again.
It's just, what's going on is the perfect thing to say, but it's also consistent with what this season has been, even though now they're fully healthy. They've got pretty much everybody back into the rotation. It's disappointing, and it was a disastrous week because they had a huge opportunity to fortify themselves a little bit. Now, as we sit here today, I think they're in the 8th spot, right?
Correct.
The Clippers have now jumped over them, so now you're messing with even more fire of possibly having to play Oklahoma City in the first round.
Yeah, look, I was ready to give them the mulligan for the Pacers game.
Sure.
Maybe even more than you were. I think part of the reason you were offended, you went. You saw it.
And that game should have been won twice.
Yes,
even though they messed around in the first half and they gave it back to them.
The problem is then you're not going to get back-to-back mulligans in the same week when you're reducing you had this 5-game homestand, okay? And realistically, if you want to be serious about giving yourself the best chance to get out of the play-in securely, you're going to win all 5, right? Or you're going to win 4. Now, if they win tonight, they'll end up, I think, 3-2 on the trip or on the homestand. But that's not good enough. And 2 old habits
30
are back. One is casual defensive performance that set the tone and allows the other team, in this case, New Orleans, to say, we're not really that interested in winning, but hey, we got a chance. Let's have some
fun. We're in Minneapolis
and win
for
tonight.
3 days. Let's win one.
Exactly. Let's try to get one of the 2. And the other is closing badly. At the end of close games. This is a major issue for this club that still hasn't been addressed, because during the winning streak, as you know, a lot of times we were so securely ahead, we didn't need to finish strong.
There was no clutch
They still
minutes.
have to figure out how to finish games. They got to take some of the pressure off Anthony, where everything runs through him, and he's not always capable of dealing with it very well. So
next step,
if you want to win in the playoffs next round at all, you're assuming you're going to have close games. They still have to figure that out, and they have not.
The easy schedule, by the way, only matters if you take care of the easy schedule. And they haven't done that all season long, unfortunately.
Next up, the Wild are 39-25 with just 13 games left in the regular season. They won both Monday against the Kings and Wednesday against the Kraken. Still, though, no timeline on our superstar, Kirill Kaprizov. It is something that we continually talk about every Friday night. We just haven't heard what's going on, Dan.
Yeah, it's interesting on the no timeline, because I was talking to Michael Russo about this, who, of course, covers the Wild like a blanket. And he said what I suspected. He said, look, there's a timeline on Kirill for sure, but he said Bill Guerin doesn't want to go public with it for the obvious reason, that if he misses the deadline, then everybody is scrambling. The Jackals are going, what's going on? So he says there is a timeline. He firmly believes that Guerin means it when he says that Kaprizov's going to play this season. The obvious question is it going to be like with 2 games left in the regular season? Is it going to be with 5 games left in the regular season? And who's he going to be, right? And the other, I think, issue that gets underplayed is I think the Erickson Ek injury is actually trickier, and they may be more worried about when he's going to come back compared to Kirill. So in the meantime, they've had a nice little rebound this week, scored a few goals, gotten a little bit of offense going. And the other thing, by the way, that's improved dramatically, I think in the penalty kill, they're 11 for 12 the last 5 games. That's been miserable. So those are little steps that help kind of hold the fort. But we're still in the waiting game for the big shot, the big knockers.
Well, and Gus Bus has been really good too. He basically stole one of those games earlier in the week as well. I'm serious when I say this, and this might not surprise people, including our friend Kevin Fallness of the Wild Radio Network. You could do one of those wacky radio games where you give me a name and then I have to guess, is he on the Wild or not on the Wild? Yeah. I'd probably go like 0 for 5 right now with guys that they're playing, right? Because you think about just the number of people that continue to be out. Even, Zuccarello just randomly a couple of games ago, you find out basically 2 hours before that he's not going to go. These injuries, we've talked about it all season. They gave themselves a nice cushion when injuries and adversity inevitably hit. And it's hit them like a tidal wave, and it just seems like the waves are never stopping here. So you're trying to just hold water, you're trying to just hold on, and that's what they're doing for the most part. They're still in a pretty good spot, but you kind of nailed it. When these players come, if these players come back first of all, which they think some of them will, how good are they going to be? How long are they going to need to get ready to ramp back up? Because as we all know, because it's the Cup, you can't really ease into the postseason. You got to be ready to go from the jump, and the playoffs, I think, start in less than a month. So I don't know what to think of this thing.
Here's where Guerin's stuck, man. He almost has to force Kaprizov to play, or both these guys to play, because otherwise there's going to be that criticism. You could have used them and gotten an extra contract.
No doubt.
Made a trade.
LTIR.
And added somebody big by the LTIR rule, which we don't have time to explain, but means you can cheat the salary cap.
Like other teams have.
And get an extra player like several other teams have. You're exactly right.
Still to come, that $250 million fraud case here during COVID, JFK files, and March Madness. Do we care about the big dance anymore? March Madness is underway. The NCAA tournament, also known as the Big Dance. College basketball teams face off. Fans have fun filling out brackets. There's upsets, Cinderella stories, other surprises, you name it. But Dan, you posted in an email, does it matter that much anymore?
Wow.
I don't have, and
Big question.
I'm not suggesting I have a definitive answer, but I do think people mistake the fact that there's like 50 billion brackets filled out every year as proof that this is bigger and better than ever. Because I think the bracket phenomenon has only a little, frankly, to do with the tournament itself for a lot of people. I literally, like the first or maybe the second game was played, I'm in the KFAN office, and I get the first, you can't make it up, my bracket's busted already. I don't care if your bracket's busted.
Oh, man. There must be a new sales guy that doesn't know the deal.
Well, you're close, actually. Anyway, I don't think it quite has the same gravitas, bigness to me. And maybe that's old guy looking back to some of the legendary days of Phi Slamma Jamma and some of the great upsets and some of the great legends. But I think the transience that is now, that look, I'm not begrudging players for moving as quickly as they now do every 15 minutes. But I think we're allowed to still say, well, what impact does that have on the experience for the fan who doesn't have a dog in the fight on a particular team? And I think it is so transient now, players coming and going every, like I said, 15 minutes, that I do think that also, for me, it sort of takes away from the feeling that I had. I still watch. I'll still pay attention to great storylines and good games. But I just don't think it feels as grand to me as it once did.
I don't know. For me personally, when I hear the music, and by the way, it was weird. I know Greg Gumbel was kind of in and out recently. It was weird. They did a great tribute to him, the longtime host of March Madness who passed away this year. It still felt the same to me. If my phone is any indication, the same people in my life that are usually checking in on it and doing the brackets. My son, I think, has like 15
30.
And wants to tell me about everything. I have to care about his. I don't have to care about coworkers. I have to care about his. Now, it used to be you would get the unknown stories like a Wally Zerbiak from Miami of Ohio, or even Steph Curry was a little school guy, right? Who obviously became Steph Curry. Now, every player's new. Now it's almost like every team, even the Blue Bloods, you're learning about these guys, or you remember them from 2 schools ago when they played in an NCAA tournament as a freshman. What I will say is what has remained constant is you got the 70-year-old coaches that are still rolling, that are still pulling up, right?
Yeah,
You've got Tom Izzo.
Real quick.
You've got Cal, obviously, who just beat Bill Self. You've got Rick Pitino, who's been banished multiple times and somehow fine. That's where I think it's compelling, is the old guys are still hanging around out there, and that is the one constant of March Madness.
Real quick, the McNeese State had the best upset the first day.
Yep,
Their
Clemson.
coach has allegedly already taken a job with NC State, but they allowed him to coach. And everybody assumed their team was going to collapse emotionally because of that distraction. And you know why? The coach is honest. He says it. You know what? Check the DMs on 5 of my players.
It's a good point.
Everybody wants them. And so to that extent, there's an openness to it. But that again, though, speaks to the transience of the fact that coaches are leaving every 8 minutes and players are moving too.
You guys know why it's called the Big Dance?
I give them freedom. God bless them for their freedom, but I do think then, as you say, you don't even know the blue bloods as well, which to me takes away from the event.
Pop quiz, do you know why they call it the Big Dance?
No, why?
I looked into it. In 1977, Marquette's coach Al McGuire said you got to wear the blue blazer to the big dance, and then he went on to win the national championship.
So
now they say the Big Dance. I
That's
think that's kind of fun.
That's a great
little factoid for you.
Speaking of, heavyweights from back in the day, Al McGuire, terrific.
And then I think that was his last year of coaching as well. Next up, the ringleaders of the Feeding Our Future fraud case found guilty on all counts. A jury convicted Amy Bach and Salim Said on Wednesday after just a few hours, and after a 6-week trial. Federal prosecutors say those involved in the scheme stole $250 million from a program meant to feed children in need during COVID. Overall, 70 defendants in the case. No sentencing date, though, yet. Dan?
Well, the way it's been explained to me, Amy Bach was not alleged to have stolen as much money as several others, in this bit. Not that it was a trifle, but not as much. And what I think we learned through the case, which I think was very well argued once again by the prosecution here, by the feds, is that for her, it may have been ego as much as money. If you go back and listen or pay attention, read some of the testimony in this case, she became a god.
Right.
In
direct quote from one of the people.
Literally.
Yeah.
There was one event where the people at the event serenaded her by name. And so for her, it appeared this intoxicating thing that she couldn't let go of. Plus she might have tried, according to the prosecutors, to end up with a little extra money as well. And it does remind us, because we knew we had a lot of underlings caught.
Right.
The question was, how far up would it go? And this is the top, right? Amy Bach represented the top of this case. And so it stinks from the top all the way down, is I think what's been confirmed by these last 2 verdicts.
Being serenaded, you can't put a price on that. So even if you're not getting more, if you're getting less money than some of them. What was interesting to me, Lori mentioned the timeline, 5 or 6 weeks of trial and testimony and all these different witnesses. The jury was in there for 10 minutes. Right? It was so sealed. It was so locked up, no pun intended. It was so detailed and so easy to kind of follow the trail. It does make you wonder how it went on for so long, right? And I know that Governor Walz and others have argued, we knew. We knew, we just couldn't do a few things. And we had it a long time ago. How many more millions could have been saved or not stolen, I guess, had they been on top of this thing?
There's got to be a good investigative reporter who's going to end up writing this book. And I can't even imagine what we're going to find out in the book itself.
I vote for Paul Bloom.
Stunning.
I was going to say Paul Bloom
would be at the obviously.
Can we bring Tom Lydon back too to help out?
Out of retirement, yeah.
Bloom and Lydon.
That would be a tag team.
That would be cool.
You don't want them on you.
No,
President Trump released classified files on the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in 1963. We're talking about a ton of unredacted pages. So far, no big surprises. Lee Harvey Oswald still believed to have acted alone in the shooting. You can dig into them on the National Archives website, Dan.
Well,
have you started to do that yet?
I have not.
Yeah.
Find some time.
However, our guy Gerald Posner, who's written the definitive Oswald book, Case Closed, has. And so far, he says, I got to be honest with you, I do not see the smoking gun. And maybe he's missing something. Maybe there will be something there. He says he's got an open mind, that there might be something, and he's willing to consider it if we get it. I think the reason, I know it's boring, that there's not a smoking gun is Oswald did it. And that's the bottom line. I think what some of these documents do confirm is there was stuff covered up, but it was a lot of embarrassment that several agencies could have and should have done more to identify Oswald. Not necessarily they knew he was going to try to assassinate him on November 22, but that as a person of interest, they should have done a better job trying to sort of connect some dots. And people take from that, well, that must mean they're covering up their own involvement in the actual assassination. I just don't think we have any evidence of that, and I don't think it's going to change on the basis of all these documents.
30.
No, there's not a lot that is going to change. It's good that this stuff is out.
Yeah.
Well, I like to say it's good because now the conspiracy theories will stop. How naive do I sound with that? I sound so naive when I even say it out loud, because you mentioned Gerald Posner. You know what he spent most of the day doing, or most of the week doing? Well, joining his guy, Merconish, and then tweeting at legislators that are grabbing little nuggets that may or may not have anything to do with something and connecting them to something much more sinister. See, we told you about this, and he's having to respond to these.
Enough said.
How does he respond? With facts.
With facts, but again,
with real information.
Who
reportage.
sees it? Does it even matter? Right. Are you just screaming? Is it tilting at windmills?
Tilting at windmills is correct.
Because people are going to believe what they want to believe, no matter how much info you put out there, sadly.
I want to get to one more thing in this block. President Trump wants to impeach a Judge James Boisberg, who ruled against his administration when it came to the deportation of Venezuelan migrants. Chief Justice John Roberts issued a statement saying it isn't an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision, Dan.
I'm going to give you two indirect Trump quotes from within a week of each other. Trump on judges. Where did it go? It should be illegal to criticize judges, and probably is illegal. Within 7 days, Trump on judges. He's a radical left-wing lunatic who should be impeached.
Enough said.
How do we, and guess what, if you haven't figured it out, the judge who rules the way Trump likes needs to be defended, and other people need to be put in jail for ripping him. And the judge who criticizes him, that's the guy who has to be impeached. I don't even know how Trumpists can reconcile this sort of a contradiction within a week. But maybe we're so far past all this, none of it matters to anybody anymore. I don't know.
Reconciliation is a long way away. Isn't it? I
yes.
mean, that's just, there's no...
Well, I think the question moving forward, are we ever going to recover? I mean, how much damage is going to be done that ends up becoming irreversible? Because in this administration, part of what they're saying is that's what we want to do. We want to do stuff that can't be reversed if we lose the next election. That is, if he is willing, if he doesn't decide to run for another term.
Which he'll probably challenge for, right? Why wouldn't he? And they'll challenge whatever legal precedent is there. I mean, we said it, and we've talked about it a million times, and you're right. The Democrats who don't like it have no one to blame but themselves.
Correct.
That we're back here in this never-ending, spot where we don't know what's going to happen.
Send your letters to Lori Fisher, by the way. Thank you.
No, please don't.
Oh, sorry.
I agree with him about the first thing on the.
Welcome back to Enough Said. Justin Eichhorn resigned from the Minnesota Senate just hours before the Senate was going to expel him. He's charged with soliciting a minor for prostitution in Bloomington. He was a senator for Grand Rapids, married with 4 kids, Dan.
Well, this is the allegations are beyond disturbing, obviously, and this is one of the few cases where the two sides, Republicans and Democrats, seem to come together. Right? Didn't everybody pretty much say you got to resign?
Yeah.
Even before you could argue he deserves, like anybody, a day in court. And as far as I know, he's already, like he said, he's already come and gone.
No, the only decision. That was the only decision. And thankfully, they did all come together on it, right? That's
just
where it
released
gets
from
weird.
jail, too.
That's where it gets weird when you start standing tall for stuff like this.
The Twins, next up, the Twins announced their plans for their home opener at Target Field April 3rd against the Astros. Breakfast on the Plaza, which they always do. A former Twin, Nelson Cruz, will throw out the first pitch.
Nelly Cruz.
And unfortunately, Royce Lewis suffered a hamstring injury during spring training. So
how shocking is that?
I love that. Come for the breakfast, Lori says. But by the way, why couldn't Royce Lewis hand out the donuts?
Well, that's a good idea.
He'd probably pull the other hamstring.
Well, that's
maybe
true.
he'll be playing by then.
If he walks gingerly out there, maybe it's a little too cold. I don't know. Yeah, that's.
I'm not in a baseball mood yet. I got to admit.
Me neither. Didn't I see Brooks Lee just got hurt too for a minute?
He did.
Yeah,
He
the
did.
injuries are
Next up.
starting to pile up here with 10 minutes to go in spring training.
For the Twins,
yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
The 2 stuck astronauts in the International Space Station are finally back home. They were supposed to be up there for a week, instead 9 months. My question to you two, if that was you stuck in space, what would be the first thing that you would eat when you got back?
Oh, eat when I got back. Man.
Probably Arby's
so
potato cakes.
Arby's.
Yeah, I'm going to say hot ham and Swiss.
Yeah, maybe a
hot ham and Swiss meal
Keep
with
it
potato
simple,
cakes.
just
Justin?
something,
I think I might go with that too now that Dan's put that.
It does sound good.
I don't know, pizza. I would keep myself busy in the space shuttle by watching the Fox Local app because there's just so much content. I mean, every Jason show's on there.
Well, so is Enough Said.
You wouldn't. The 9 months
The
would just
options are
fly
endless.
by.
Yeah.
It'd be so many
like
Love
about
Is
2 weeks.
Blind
And finally,
cameos.
and Love Is Blind, yes.
98
not on
Degrees
Fox
guy,
Local,
he's
but
on that a lot. I mean, I just watched the Jason show. It'd be like I was there for 10 minutes.
The Frenchie is the most popular purebred dog again, 3rd year in a row, a dynasty according to the American Kennel Club. Labs number 2, Golden Retrievers, then German Shepherds, and then Poodles. And I know someone is getting a puppy.
Oh, the puppy's here.
Oh, you got the puppy.
Yeah, well, I didn't
Is it
get
a
the
Frenchie?
puppy. I didn't get the puppy. The Golden Retriever was just at my house one day when I came back, and he's apparently staying.